Welcome to another edition of the morning briefing on this Peel Yourself Off the Mat Monday. I'm Jeff DeForest along with Mike Lubitz. Happy to be with you here on nofilter.net. A ton of pigskin conversation that was generated over the weekend going into it. A lot of excitement both on the college and the professional fronts. And of course, the marquee game of the weekend was Michigan and Penn State. But I believe that story was eclipsed by what happened. And Lubie, you know this to be true. It was my stated dream to you. You asked me what some of my desires were if the job that we had both started together at 940 Wins in Miami, an all-sports station, a fabled station, it's been in the city forever. Started out when Marconi first put a couple of wires together and got a spark and said, hey, it could be radio. And so we were very proud to be there. And Lubie, I think you were a little dismayed and not really ready for my answer at that time. As I told you, you know what, Michael? This would be my advice. The best thing that could happen to you in this business is you sign a 5-year guaranteed contract at a new station for a lot of money and you get fired the very first day. Kind of what was the source, the spark, the catalyst that ignited the reasons behind nofilter.net. Where guys were getting fired for what seemed like absurd reasons. So you had that guy Adler with ESPN, and he refers to Venus Williams charging the net as using guerrilla tactics. The next thing you know, some scrub, some stringer for the New York Times writes on the internet that, oh, this guy Adler has said that Venus Williams looks like a gorilla. His number gets taken down, not even a steward's inquiry, just whoosh, cancel culture got to him. It happened to a lot of people. And that's one of the reasons why Joe Manuel and his partner decided, hey, let's provide a platform for these people that have been shut out in life.
Yep. Yeah.
For no real great reason. It's just words. I understand there are, things that you could express that, and we see a lot of this going on in the world right now that are particularly hateful and spiteful. And unfortunately, people with whatever mental defect react to those statements and start doing things that are violent and vulgar and just not good for the human race. That's one thing. But words, when you're talking about a sports figure, I'm not sure, that they, and especially if they're misconstrued, like was the case with this Adler and Venus Williams incident, where, was she not employing guerrilla tactics? She's charging the net like she's a second coming to Martina Navratilova. What's the guy supposed to say?
It's a sports term. Yes, that's
a sports term. Sure.
Yes.
Sports, war terminology.
All the time.
They tend to coincide and overlap. And, so very, very much, ridiculous that would be the source of something. But here we are on nofilter.net. And we can say whatever we want to say.
Yes.
The thing was, though, you couldn't necessarily get yourself fired for cause if you signed that big radio contract. So, the idea of going out there and just telling a bunch of people to go fuck themselves as they called in.
That's their dream.
Wasn't going to work. However, and the other thing, and I would imagine if you put this in your high school yearbook, or any place where people were saying, what would you like to be in the future? And my desire would have been, if I had it to do all over again, never mind being a broadcaster, I would want to be a failed college or pro football coach. And the concept here that we're getting to is that if you got fired on the first day of a 5-year guaranteed contract, well, you're getting paid to go to the beach.
Yeah.
And now I'm worried. I'm very much worried. We have an election coming up. The price of gasoline always seems to be somewhat of a barometer as to where the economy stands. This is a giant concern, of course, naturally, for everybody around the world and in the United States of America. You don't want to be paying $5 for gas. But I wouldn't be surprised if even outside of California, the price of gas exceeded $6 pretty soon. Because the oil guys that are going to have to eat Jimbo Fisher's $75 million payout, the buyout for being a bust as a coach at Texas A&M when he had every possible advantage, I think we're going to get screwed at the pump, ladies and gentlemen. Are you fearful of buying gas in the future because of this Jimbo Fisher firing? And would it not be a dream of yours, Mike Lubitz, to be in this circumstance? Who wouldn't want to hit a lottery ticket for being lousy at your job?
Well, that's the thing is, like, people are making fun of him. I am a Florida State fan. I'm like, screw you. Good for you that this is happening. You ruined FSU. You talked all that shit on your way out to go to a place that had the resources and all the money and all the things. And they did everything he wanted, anything he wanted. And he was worse there than he was at FSU. But the joke's on me because you said it. He's getting paid $75 million to do nothing. And in our business, there's non-competes, right? So you can't even double dip. You don't need to, but you can't. He can. He can be a coach again. He can be an analyst on TV, which I'm sure he could bullshit his way through, and still make $75 million. Good for him. I can't even lie. He pulled the wool over all of our eyes. He got paid a crap load of money to suck.
Never mind Lou Gehrig. The Jimbo Fisher exit speech will be today. I feel like the luckiest man on the face of the earth. Who is luckier? Yes. That's the magic question he's going to answer. If you hit the lottery, would you continue to work? In this case, he'll have to do it somewhere else. And what about Texas A&M? My God, you think that the money is being underestimated and minimized by the powers that be in college football and college sports in general? For years, they were telling us, well, you know what? If we pay these guys, we won't be able to run these programs anymore. Bullshit. You can now pay a guy $80 million to go away, and what is the incoming coach going to do? Unless he's some schmank that's getting his leg up for the first time, which has happened, as was kind of the case with FSU, where it was a giant step forward for Mike Norvell to come there. They still had to pay. I mean, they were paying Jimbo there also.
No, he left. We didn't have to pay a buyout.
You didn't have to pay a buyout there? No. I don't. I think they're still paying Bobby Bowden. He's dead.
We may be paying Bobby Bowden. I don't know if we're paying Jimbo, but I do know that A&M's not going to do the FSU route. The FSU route. Look, they went and got a Norvell. They
have to get a high-profile guy. Yeah,
it didn't work. They went for a guy who a lot of people in college football who we talked to liked, but the rest of us had no idea who the fuck he was. So they didn't have to go big with him. No. A&M's already proven they're not going to do that. Like every name you've heard on this list is a guy that's at a good program that's winning. So if he's going to leave, which I don't see it, you're going to have to pay him out of the ass. So it's like money's no object for them. They're pretty much spinning in, and we have a lot of friends that still use the word amateur. They're spinning in that idea. You can't even try to use that word with A&M existing and doing what they're doing.
As Texas A&M continues to fail and pay guys outrageous amounts of money, is that not a recommendation, an indication that everybody should be thinking about buying an electric vehicle? How much longer can they continue to do this? I mean, just the Exxon Valdez didn't leak this much oil. Anyway, that was one of the interesting stories of the weekend. And, of course, Penn State got shellacked by Michigan on the college front. Michigan runs the ball 32 straight times. That included a couple of kneel downs at the end of the game, the fabled victory formation. Are you listening? Are you watching, Mario Cristobal? You putz?
Yeah, it would be one more win.
I used to like Mario. I mean, watching him coach, it's excruciatingly painful, is it not? Take a few shots. He was in that FSU game. Got a quarterback that's a true freshman, and you're going to run the ball with like 2 minutes to go and try and establish what field position? I don't know. What are you doing there? Take a couple of shots to win the game. It can happen. But the Michigan Penn State game, and of course, everybody's going to be looking at James Franklin, which he did the thing that baseball teams all do. It's a little bit of a different lineup in terms of the coaching staff in college football, but he essentially fired the hitting coach after this after this last debacle against Michigan, where he failed once again. He is 1-13 since 2016 in games against teams ranked in the top 10. And I believe has he ever beaten Michigan or Ohio State, James Franklin, at Penn State? He's had good teams. He's had time to been there long enough that he has his program in place. This isn't one of those deals where a coach comes in, gets hammered by the arch rival the first couple of years, but then finally his foundation that he built with the program and his culture or whatever starts to kick in, and he's able to come back and be accountable at least for some of those games against major opponents, the teams that you have to beat if you're going to be successful in the judgment, the ultimate judgment, which is, hey, can the guy win a championship? Maybe so. James Franklin appears to be one of those guys that will never win a championship. Paterno is rolling over in his grave. And so they fired the offensive coordinator after this last ball game against Michigan. But can you stop the run? 32 straight runs as Michigan literally ran away from Penn State and closed the game out in the second half by, eating the clock up like they were Butterbean Esh training for one of those 4 rounders and saying, hey, I've got to be at least 300 pounds when I step in there or I'm going to get fined on my contract. They want a fat guy in the ring. So Michigan, again, fattens up on, now without Jim Harbaugh, one of the absurd stories that we have seen so far in college football. By what authority was this man suspended? And how is it that some Michigan alum, I mean, is there nothing going on there? As the alumni couldn't rally and own some judge? If the Gambinos could do it, what could have been easier than to get a temporary restraining order and, some kind of litigation that would have suspended this suspension? That makes sense. That would have lifted the suspension at least temporarily, right? An injunction. You couldn't wake up some judge on Friday night and say, "Hey, Lou, you owe us." I know you let all those kids off that robbed the grocery store, but the cops managed to sweep that under the rug. But you got to get this injunction written now. We need Coach Harbaugh on the sideline. They just couldn't do it, which was kind of crazy. But anyway, he doesn't coach, and who knows what's going to happen. But by what authority did they issue this suspension? It's the Big Ten. They came up with the conclusion that it wasn't necessarily, and this was the assertion they made, it wasn't necessarily Jim Harbaugh that orchestrated this whole thing, but he was being held responsible when it was all on the school itself and the university. And what difference does it make? I mean, you would think that if he was a master at decoding signals, he might also be equally adept at sending signals in from his hotel room or wherever he happened to be watching a game. He could have been in the stands, for God's sake. I guess he wasn't allowed in a facility. How much of a disgrace is that when your head coach shows up? Because came very close. I mean, this decision didn't come down till the very last minute.
It was Friday.
Imagine he's walking in there and he said, "Nah, Jim, you can't come in here today."
Yeah, he did. That's what he traveled. Remember, it was at Penn State. He traveled to Penn State with the team. Yes. And late Friday, it came out. Like the whole thing. What I don't understand is the penalties to Michigan, I guess, because they don't have their coach, but he's allowed to be there for practices. Yes. We know he's having communication with people of the staff. So then what's the penalty?
How hard would it be, to prepare his staff to do exactly what he would have done anyway? Like here's a list of possible situations at the end of the game where I might be involved in a decision. If such and such occurs, call a timeout. Well, whatever. I mean, you would imagine that it wouldn't be too hard to prepare these guys to do exactly what they wanted. So what is the point? Just have them on the sidelines there. Settle this issue in the offseason. If you have a beef with Michigan, deprive them of 50 scholarship players or whatever, or deny them the possibility to play for the national championship, whatever you want to do as punishment. If it's fair, fine, but it seems absolutely absurd to proceed in the fashion that they have. Who's running the Big Ten? Jose Suleiman? I know he's dead, but his son is still running the World Boxing Council. I think they're a better run organization than anything that would be considered administrative when it comes to college football. One final thing here, too. A great weekend of football all the way around. In the pros, congratulations to Lubie's Florida State Seminoles. They did prevail over a tough luck University of Miami team, fought their eyeballs out. That was one of those games where the rivalry actually did manifest itself on the field. These kids have been playing against each other since Pop Warner, and all of that rhetoric was actually applicable in this game to an extent. Although Lumie's a little upset because I think Florida State, at least I did, I might have to temper my opinion on that, curb my enthusiasm. I thought they had an excellent chance of the 4 to be the national champion. I'm not sure that they aren't indeed the weakest link of the 4 teams that are left up there. Their explosive offense, I would think, would help them be. I mean, that would be the asset I'd be looking for. But is it true? Do we have to whip out the ultimate and oldest of football cliches? Defense wins championships.
I think Georgia's the best team in the country right now. I think Michigan, they now played a good team and they won. Fine. Ohio State 3. I would put Florida. I would put the rankings where they are. Florida State at 4. Because Florida State and Washington are very similar right now. Both are good teams that are sort of just getting by. The funny thing is Alabama and Oregon are playing really well, but they have a loss, and that does matter. So, I would put Oregon, Alabama, and then Texas. I think it sucks because this is the year an 18 playoff would be fucking perfect.
Yes.
This is the year.
Start till next year. You got 12 going next year.
At 4. So teams are going to get left out.
I just want to leave on this note because I always get a kick out of this, especially with the influence that gambling has had on the way sports are covered and no longer is a taboo subject. In fact, you have people. Rex Ryan's wearing like a FanDuel patch, and every commercial features some guy that you would have thought, "Wow, that guy's a sick, degenerate gambler." He's recommending that you quickly separate yourself from your money by engaging in a form of self-sabotage that is so overwhelmingly in favor of the house. No wonder these guys are able to sponsor NFL Network games that they were forbidden to even be talked about. They would have just as soon have made Pete Rose the commissioner of the National Football League. But with all of the influence that gambling has had on sports and sports coverage and the popularity of sports also, to pick games against the spread, I'm watching NFL Countdown on ESPN. And they have Rex Ryan. They have Randy Moss, who we like very much. Turns out he is a great guy. A lot of people, the reputation was not necessarily favorable. We had a chance to meet him in a casual setting. And a guy couldn't have been any nicer of a guy. You couldn't help but root for Randy Moss in his broadcasting career. And he's doing just fine. Teddy Bruschi's on there, too. And all three of them are picking games without the point spread, which for my money would be like paying a hooker to come up to your room there in Las Vegas before the Super Bowl, a high-priced hooker, and saying, all I want to do is cuddle. What the fuck? Have some balls, ESPN. I want to see Rex's record against the spread. That'll determine whether or not he's a real expert or not on this stuff. Anybody could go, well, I like San Francisco when they're favored by 27, which they look pretty good this week. That wasn't the case. They were actually 3-point favorites on the road against Jacksonville. Jacksonville turned out to be fugazi. San Francisco is back on track. And if I'm Deebo Samuel's agent, I am renegotiating his contract right now because they're a different team with this guy in the lineup. All right, that's all we have for you today. Morning briefing. Thanks so much for tuning in here on NoFilter.net and Caffeine TV. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. A lot of stuff. I mean, there's so many things going on. We'll get to more of it tomorrow as we say thanks for tuning in this morning to the latest edition of the Morning Briefing.